working. Okay.
I've just unmuted you, Shannon. I believe people who are calling in, I think it's hard to unmute yourself through WebEx, unfortunately. So if you're on the phone, I'll unmute you.
No, I did unmute my, oh, so you unmuted me or I can do it myself?
Yeah.
It just seemed like there was a little bit of a delay.
Have a go. See if you can mute and unmute yourself now.
Okay.
Yes. Excellent. Okay, good. That's good to know.
Great. I feel like a little kid. I can unmute myself through this. So my name is Shannon Ellis Brock. I'm with Puget Sound Cooperative Credit Union, and we have been recipients of clean energy funds in the past. And if I could go anywhere and money was no object, I would just go where I always go, and that's back home to France.
Will you say that again, Shannon? You'll go back where?
I said I would go back home to France.
Oh.
If money was no object, though, I would stay on the Tour de France for the whole tour instead of just the week I normally go for.
Wow. Nice. Okay, Samir.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, yep. So my name is Samir Ranade. I'm the Civic Engagement and Policy Manager for Front and Centered, and that's an incredibly difficult question. I would say I would want to go to Berlin to see the progress in renewable energy.
Nice, Berlin. I wasn't expecting that. Let's go with Adam.
Adam, are you able to unmute yourself? I'll do it for you now.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's what
I'm Adam Zimmerman. I'm CEO of Craft 3, and I'm in Portland, Oregon. And honestly, you guys just want to go outside with people. So I'll stay with that.
It's getting to that point, isn't it? Just outside. Okay, I probably should have just went in alphabetical order and you guys would have been ready. But let's go with Eli.
Hi, Jennifer, and thanks for having me. I'm Eli Lieberman with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. Like the Puget Sound Cooperative Credit Union and Craft 3, we've been recipients of the Clean Energy Fund grants. If I could go anywhere right now, unlimited money, probably skiing in Japan, I think would be a good use of that experience.
Hey, you have to take me with you. Carl.
Carl Tite, Craft 3, Marketing and External Affairs. I guess I'd go, I think I'd do Italy. Sorry, Jay, I'm going to copy you. I haven't done that as an adult, so that would be fun.
Right. Allison, do we have you now? I think I saw you pop on.
I want to give people a chance to unmute themselves just to check that it's working for everybody. But Allison, I'll unmute you now.
Okay, thanks so much. FYI, when I hover over that icon, it says the host has muted you and you are not able to unmute yourself. So,
Allison, I'm sorry.
Quirk of the program, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Allison Arnold. I serve as program director for E8 Angel Network. It's a Seattle-based group of angel investors who are focused on investing in early-stage companies, clean tech companies in the United States and Canada, and including companies that are focused on clean energy innovation. And if I were to go anywhere right now, so I used to live in New Zealand for many years, and I've heard that they no longer have any COVID cases, and I'd love to get back there, so I think I'd go to New Zealand. Trouble is that they're going into winter, and I'm really looking forward to the Pacific Northwest summer.
Thanks, Allison. I've been thinking about New Zealand myself. Okay, Linda.
Can't unmute myself. I can't tell if I'm on mute.
You're unmuted now.
So you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Linda Irvine, and I am the program director at Spark Northwest, where we work on many different programs to advance energy democracy. And we've had many of our program participants use some of the lending that's been generated through this Clean Energy Fund. So our group purchase program participants and our access solar multifamily housing providers are getting loans through these programs. If I could go anywhere, I think I would go back to Hilo, Hawaii to see my parents. And the same problem with New Zealand is that I would have to be, if they let me in, I would have to be in quarantine for 14 days. So it would be a long trip.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, I think I got through the stakeholders, so I'm going to now hit commerce folks. If you could go quickly, we'll start with Aaron.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me?
Yes, also.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Aaron Dumas. I'm a commerce specialist here in our energy contracts and programs unit. I actually just started about a couple weeks ago, so I'm fairly new to commerce, but I have experience. I was formerly with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, and Linda, I've worked with you as well. So I have some knowledge of the lending programs and what the Clean Energy Fund's done. And if I could go anywhere for a week, yeah, I'd probably say probably Australia, I think. Yeah, it's getting winter down there, but my wife and I are both scuba certified, and scuba diving down there would be very fun.
Thanks, Aaron. Hans.
All right, perfect. I think you can hear me now. Yes?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, I can see you.
Yeah, so Hansberg, Energy Contracts and Programs Supervisor, help manage staff that oversee programs like the Clean Energy Fund, and within the Clean Energy Fund is, of course, the Grants to Nonprofit Lenders program. If I could go anywhere, no expense, you know, super tough to choose after hearing all these wonderful ideas. However, I think I'd have to take the entire family to Germany on an extended time and be able to share my experience that I spent over there and to show them the wide world that Germany has to offer. Thanks.
Seems like we got a couple of people who'll be going on trips together. I think we've got our new intern, Juliet, on the line. Do you want to introduce yourself real quickly?
Hi, can you see and hear me? Okay. I am a new intern with the Energy Policy Group in Department of Commerce. This is my first week, so I feel like I'm playing catch up on just about everything. This is one of the first projects that I'm going to be working on, and I'm really excited. And I guess for a place I'd want to visit right now, maybe Malaysia, although I know it's getting to be summer and really hot there. So.
Nice to meet you. Alana, I probably should have had you introduce yourself first. Want to go real quick?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Alana. I'm the admin assistant for the Energy Programs and Communities Unit at Commerce in the Energy Division. And if I could go anywhere, it would absolutely be a tour of Japan and just spend most of my time eating a lot of delicious food and having the time of my life. That would be my choice. I'm also gonna, because of the strange microphone foibles going on here, I'm gonna unmute everybody now just to make sure that everybody is in control of their own microphone. So I'm gonna unmute everybody and you can mute yourself again as appropriate.
Thanks, Alana. And I'm Jennifer. I know most of you actually through my work at Spark Northwest. I am at Commerce now. I've been in my position, feedback, you can mute yourself. I have been in my position about 6 months now here at Commerce as the Managing Director of the Energy Programs and Communities Unit, where we oversee and manage and administer our low-income weatherization program for the state, as well as the Clean Energy Fund, energy efficiency, and solar grants, among other things. So I'm happy you're all here. We took a little bit longer than I had scheduled for our introductions, but I think that was worth it, and that's okay. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation. I'm going to turn my video off while I'm presenting because I have not mastered how to do that at the same time. So you should still be able to hear me. If you can't, someone will let me know. Okay, so I'm going to jump in. Oops, that's not the right button.
And just as a reminder before we start, anyone who hasn't remuted their microphone, this would be a good time to do it. I'm going to try not to mute people from now on because I don't want you to be locked out of the audio.
Okay. So, let me see. Okay. I need to get rid of this little participant panel. Okay, there we go. So the Energy, Climate, and Policy Advisory Committee, that's a lot of words. We did not come up with that. The legislature did for us. So we've been calling it ECPAC because that's much easier to say. And it is what is a section 23 of the Clean Energy Transformation Act that passed in the legislature in 2019. In that section, Commerce is charged with convening this advisory committee to develop recommendations to the legislature around examining the cost and benefits of energy-related policy, programs, functions, activities, incentives. So quite broad and far-reaching. As we were digesting that proviso at Commerce, we were also having in parallel discussions around the future of Clean Energy Fund, or CEF, beyond Clean Energy Round 4, and our legislative priorities for the 2021 session. So we decided to merge the two efforts under the umbrella of ECPAC. So this advisory committee will be entirely focused on the Clean Energy Fund and looking at historical distributions as well as recommendations for the future. So Commerce is the lead agency. Kate Kelly and our policy staff team is overseeing this effort with support from myself and Brian Young, many of you have worked with. And she is also leading our state energy strategy effort under CETA, and will be connecting and aligning the two efforts as much as possible. The proviso did dictate who the advisory members are of the ECPAC. That is this list of distinguished folks representing PNNL, higher education institutes across the state. So we've got Central, Eastern, WSU, Evergreen, UW, and Western. Some of these folks have been very immersed and familiar with the Clean Energy Fund program and projects that have resulted from CEF, and other folks are new to CEF but have experience working in either research or academia around clean energy. So that is the advisory committee. The advisory committee will meet about 3 times as a group between June and September to take a look at the recommendations coming out of the stakeholder groups. So this is our schedule. I will say this could get altered, as with anything right now. We've got a lot going on at the state and in our just our world right now, but this is our best guess of a schedule as of today. The advisory committee met for the first time a couple weeks ago. Our stakeholder sessions, we have 3 different stakeholder groups, and this is the Clean Energy Lending Group. And all groups will be meeting mid-June through mid-July. I could see that getting slightly extended. Then the advisory committee will reconvene towards the end of July. We'll have a short public input period in August, and then the advisory committee meeting will convene for a last time late August, early September. And then we at Commerce go through a fairly lengthy process to then turn in all of those recommendations into a legislative report that will then get delivered to the legislature by the end of the year. So stakeholder group and why you're all here. As mentioned, we've got 3 different stakeholder groups that have been formed around sort of the legacy areas that Clean Energy Fund has invested in the past. And that's clean energy infrastructure, also known as our grid mod, Clean Energy Fund solar falls into that bucket, as well as electrification transportation. Clean Energy Innovation and Demonstration, that would be the RD&D grants that we've done in the past. And then Clean Energy Lending, as you all know, as the grants to nonprofit lenders. We intentionally relabeled them because we want to encourage out-of-the-box thinking and really think creatively and innovatively around how to align these investments around FEDA and other economic innovation areas that we think the state should be moving into. The stakeholders represent a mix of both current grantees, subject matter experts, environmental justice organization, and industry and advocates. And we will be meeting at least 2 times. We'll discuss as a team if we want to meet more than that, but yeah, at least 2 times, and we've already got those meetings on the books for this group. And then ultimately, each stakeholder group will be developing a set of recommendations for advisory committee discussion. So I wanted to spend just 1 minute around Clean Energy Fund and equity. One of, well, I would say there's 2 really prevailing and important priority lenses that we're asking each stakeholder group to think about as they're developing ideas, recommendations, adaptations to the Clean Energy Fund. And that is around economic recovery and stimulus, and the other one is around equity. Just to give a little bit of background without going into a ton of detail, there have been some attempts, I would say they're little baby step attempts to include more equity principles and provisions in the Clean Energy Fund in the past legislative sessions. So in 2019, a prevailing priority across all Clean Energy Fund grants is a priority must be given to projects that benefit vulnerable populations, including tribes and communities with high environmental or energy burden. So that is something we're just starting to incorporate in the Clean Energy Fund grant program. We've made a start with that with the Electrification Transportation Systems, ETS grant process that's out on the streets right now. And then we'll also be doing more targeted inclusion of these priorities with the solar deployment grant round that's coming up. Specifically for the Clean Energy Fund 4 grants to nonprofit lenders round that is scheduled to go out later this year, there's an additional priority that was introduced and altered with the 2020 short session. That was this year. That seems like ages ago. And I've highlighted that language in blue here that I know all of the lenders on this call are familiar with. But for those that aren't, this is new language that was adopted by and for the benefit of households with a high energy burden or environmental health risk inhibited by lack of access to capital. So that is still remains to be designed in terms of what exactly that means and what that looks like as this CEF4 grant round rolls out later this year. So I whizzed through that. Before I turn it over to Hans to talk about CEF and the lending program, are there any questions about the charge of the committee or the stakeholder session? Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, no questions, then I don't know what the panel is. But...
Yeah, that's okay. I just unmuted myself, and maybe I'll just have you advance the slides if it makes it easier. This is Hans. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm going to go through the history of CEF and lending program fairly briefly here, just to get us a little bit back on track so that we can get into the discussion portion of our agenda for today. And of course, I'd love to be able to hear from our three current grantees of the Clean Energy Fund. And so I'll call on them towards the end of my brief presentation here. So really quick, history of CEF and lending program. The lending program, known as the Grants to Nonprofit Lenders, has really proven critical in bridging a funding gap to support widespread adoption of proven technologies. And those are primarily energy efficiency and renewable energy, with the addition in the last round of funding for the electrification of transportation. The revolving loan also can be utilized as a pool that is utilized many times over the span of a decade and potentially beyond. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So real quick program overview is that the loan program as we know it now was initially funded in 2009 using American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds. The success of that program led to capital funding coming through first in 2013 under the Clean Energy Fund. And the initial two grantees under that were CRAFT-3 and PSCCU. And then in the next round, we had CRAFT-3 plus PSCCU and Washington State Housing Finance Commission all be successful grantees. Really, these loans are used under two primary purposes. One as direct loans out to people that need this capital. Typically speaking, that the dollars that have been lent out don't compromise or don't comprise more than 50% of the loan. And the other way that these funds are used are actually as a loan loss reserve. So in essence, if there are defaults or things along those lines, that these loans are used to help back these loans. Now, one of the great news, of course, is that our grantees have done a tremendous job of having a very low default rate and just a really high success rate in both projects and getting these dollars at the doors and bringing these projects to fruition. These loans really compromise a wide array of clean energy projects, which compromise the residential, commercial, and agricultural industry. And this is a highly leveraged fund, which has a very wide geographical reach, which really reaches over the entire state of Washington. While there is a majority of the projects that are happening on the west side, like I say, the potential across the entire geographical region is great. Historical funding. The historical funding has been just the Clean Energy Fund since 2013 has been $31.2 million. It has been funded every biennium with an additional funding of $3 million for this last round, the 1921, which we are looking at trying to get out this fall. And of course, we'll need your help, and everything that's happening in this stakeholding process will help inform that program. Overall, and we're being conservative here, is that for every dollar invested into this fund, there's at least $6 that are coming back in being leveraged. And again, that's a conservative estimate. We know for some lenders, obviously the leverage is a bit higher than that. And at this point in time, that we know that there's over 5,000 projects that have been funded and catalyzed as due to this Clean Energy Fund, grants nonprofits lending. So I would like to invite each of our current grantees to give a couple-minute overview of what they're working on and how the grants nonprofit lenders has been vital to their book of business. And I would just encourage everyone to go in order listed in the slide. So I'd like to invite CRAFT 3, then PSCCU, and then Washington State Housing and Finance Commission. So Adam or Carl, would you like to speak a few minutes about CRAFT 3 and the Grants to Nonprofit Lenders Program?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Good. Hey, everyone. So again, I'm Adam. I'll do this very quickly, Hans, I think, and then I think we're going to have more time for conversation about, how to make things better. Is that fair? Or create more opportunity for projects?
Yeah, that's fair. We'll have some conversation about multiple discussion points, and of course, in our follow-up meetings, we'll have those opportunities as well.
Yeah, because we're always thinking about how to build the pipeline. So, as far as what we've done to date, the quick statistics are there's been on the commercial lending side, and that includes loans to nonprofits as well, but there's been 27 loans. The total leverage funds on that is, the total project investment is about 114 million. Loan production has been about 24 million, a little over that. So the leverage is, as Hans was referring to, is pretty good on these projects. The types of projects on the commercial side are really all over the place. Commercial industrial energy efficiency is the largest, community scale renewables, green building contractors. So, going from 14 million at the top end down to green building contractors at 4.5 million, clean tech manufacturing at just under 3 million, waste recycling at 225,000. So that's kind of the range in terms of sectors. Again, the one comment that I would make on commercial is that there's no, while those categories are nice to talk about, there's no particular theme, because what we see is an environment where entrepreneurs across the state are trying to create opportunity, but the industry scale and economics of the projects are not always really good. And there's a variety of things, but I think, on the energy side, the bottom line is that the Northwest has very inexpensive energy. So that ripples into the economics of especially clean energy projects. On the consumer lending side, that program for us has been smaller. We've done about 500 loans. And sorry, I'm clicking through windows to remember where everything is. That's about just under $7 million out the door in terms of loans. And the leverage on those projects is much less. As I think we all know, when consumers are borrowing money, they're really borrowing the entire amount of what they need. They're generally doing it because they don't have cash on hand, whereas the commercial projects are structured differently. So the leverage on them is only about, I think it looks like about $800,000 on that 6.6 million lent. We have been, over the years, we've been doing energy lending, as has PSCCU, for a long time. Demand comes and goes with incentive, subsidy, distraction, household distraction, desire and ability to afford projects. And it's also extraordinarily difficult to get loan dollars into lower income households, as they're in a much tighter spot when it comes to repayment. And so those projects for lower income households tend to work better where they're more heavily incented. And we saw heavy incentives back when this program was really starting, with the kind of the tail end of Recovery Act money, and that really made a difference. And right now, it is, whether households are low income or moderate income, it's become more difficult to get their attention and choose to make in-depth upgrades. So I'll stop there, Hans, and I'm sure if people want to talk more about specifics, we can talk about that.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Adam. Shannon, would you care to speak about PSCCU?
Sure. So this is Shannon from PSCCU. Again, know how to unmute my phone. Proud about that. We're more of the, so we joke internally sometimes, like Craft 3 does all these really amazing flashy projects. Not flashy, but just like big, and some of them are pretty flashy, I have to admit, I'm jealous. But we're more of the boots on the ground, grassroots, like out there doing the residential work. So we receive, and our models, we're structured differently, and our models different. So between the 2 rounds of clean energy funds, or 3 if you want to count the reallocation of some of the other funds, we received just a little over $8 million. And we're on track by the end of the year that I feel pretty confident that we'll have turned that $8 million into almost $100 million in loans. The vast majority of what we do is residential. Again, energy efficiency work and solar. We have done some small commercial financing. We're limited in what we do want to take on for commercial financing based on our size and our knowledge of commercial lending, but mostly what we've done is solar on the commercial side. But some fun projects, like we recently funded a Hispanic grocery store in Ellingsburg, and just some different projects that we've worked on. But, and I agree with Adam, it is hard when you try to meet these goals of helping and funding lower income households, when there's a world that the incentives are a lot less, and it makes it harder for that to make sense for lower income families sometimes to take on that additional burden of having a loan payment. So that definitely is a challenge. One thing that's unique to us, I think, amongst the other 2 lenders, is, and when I say we're committed, I'm not implying that the other lenders are not, but we're very much committed to what we're doing, doing energy efficiency lending. We started doing that before any grant money was ever available. Grant money's definitely been very helpful for us in improving our program and making it more widespread. We leverage grant funds at a ratio of 20 to 1. So, you know, for every 100 grant dollars we get, but that was hard math. Wait, for every $1 we get in grant money, we do $20 in loans. Let me do easy math for this afternoon. So, and that returns a lot of money back into the economy, of course, with income taxes on the projects and everything. So I think on average for every grant dollar, $1.60 is actually being returned to the state in the form of just the taxes collected on the jobs. So that is really our program in a nutshell, and you know, really proud that we've been able to receive funding, and frankly, of the amount of loans we've been able to do and the dollar amount we've been able to do with the amount that we've received. So thank you for that, and talk more later.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shannon. Eli?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Hans. Can you hear me now?
Yep, loud and clear.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Yeah, so we're, I think, sort of a bit of the same theme. We lend a little bit differently than Craft 3 and Puget Sound Cooperative Credit Union. We mostly stay in the space that the Commission operates in, which is working with affordable housing, so sort of larger multifamily housing, and then also nonprofit facilities. So this is a difficult space, but the CEF grants have been really nice. So we've done earlier on a good amount of projects with Bellwether and Plymouth in Seattle, and due to tax credit reasons, it's been hard to sort of secure these loans. So it's been nice to have the CEF grant dollars available because it really helps, you know, lower the Commission's risk, which has been really nice. We've also worked with some nonprofits like the YMCA of Southwest Washington and Valley Cities in Seattle. And I think kind of like Craft 3 was saying, these where we lend is difficult because normally, you know, the borrowers operate on really tight margins. So unless the loans themselves or the energy savings are close to the debt service payments to us, it's pretty hard for these loans to pencil for the you know, the service providers that we work with. And since energy is so cheap in Washington, that has made things difficult. So those are things we're working through, but yeah, I think for us really the big thing with the CEF money is the ability to maybe issue loans unsecured to get into the affordable housing space where we might not be able to be comfortable with that risk without the CEF dollars.
Great. Thanks so much, Eli. Well, thank you to all three of our current grantees for introducing us to the work that you're doing. I'm going to transition the presentation back to Jennifer now so she can lead us through the discussion.
Great. That was great to hear from you three and to set up our discussion topic. So we have, oops, I lost my PowerPoint. We have an ambitious list of discussion topics that we're not going to get through today. We had not planned to get through all of them today, but these are just some of the topics that we've heard over the years or that were on our mind at Commerce. And so I'm sure this is actually just skimming the top of all the different things that we could talk about around Clean Energy Fund and lending. But just here's a few of that we kind of whittled down or rose to the top. And we were going to try to tackle the first two bullet questions, but I think given the time that we're at now, we'll just take one discussion topic. And then we'll figure out how to prioritize the remaining topics or any additional ones that aren't even on this list for future sessions. So these are talking about equity. You know, all three lenders mentioned how challenging it is to serve low-income households or multifamily affordable housing. So I'd like to lean into that further today. And talk through what those challenges are, especially given a recession. And, you know, Adam talking about how the tail end of R and the creation of this program was really helpful and a critical tool for recovery and keeping clean energy and front and centered, but also directing those investments to communities that need the most help. So I'd like to kind of revisit that. I think we are revisiting RA days, if not even more profound than the recession of 2008. So I'd like to lean into that topic. The other ones that, you know, economic recovery and the recession on its own is its own topic, but I think there's a direct intersection with the first bullet, of course. And then also, other topics that we could consider for the future discussions are other technologies. We've included electrification in past rounds. Are there other technologies that the fund should be nimble and adaptive for the future? The leveraging amount, the difference between private state lender for all the different loan products, what's the right mix? The scope of eligible lenders, do we continue to limit that to nonprofit lenders? Should that be expanded? And then more of a structural question around, you know, the appropriation process for Clean Energy Fund and having more security and long-term planning around these grant funds through a permanent funding source. So what I'm going to recommend, we were going to have 2 breakout sessions, but given the time, I think we'll just do the first one today. And we'll still do 2 breakout rooms. Alana, if we can technically handle this, we'll give it a try. The thought is that we'll split into 2 groups, and both of you can have conversation around this first question of how the CEF program could be better structured to serve low-income, high-energy burden customers, vulnerable populations, tribes, and highly impacted communities. So we suggest structuring your breakouts to have just a minute of individual reflection on that question, have a small group share, and then return to the main room around, let's say, 11:40, and then we can do a group share and then talk about next steps. So, Alana, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and let's see if we can pull this off, and you can split us up. I think we'll have one group and keep Shannon. Is Shannon the only one on the phone? Oh, Samir, are you only on phone?
Samir. Yeah, so we'll stay, that group will stay in this current room. And,
okay.
I'm on video too.
Oh, you are? Why can't I
Yep.
see that?
Oh.
Yeah, I got off for a minute, but I'm back on.
Okay. Yeah, you're proving it.
So in a minute, a little window will pop up inviting you to a breakout session room. This won't happen for everybody. This will happen for Hans, Aaron, Eli, Carl, Allison, and Linda. So if you just accept that invitation, that will take you to the right place. Let's give this a go. And then we'll see you at 11:40. Okay. All right. Okay, so the rest of us, we will stay here. Jennifer, Just
Okay.
that seems simplest for potential audio issues.
Yeah.
So we
Oh,
have
I see now the little box, gray box says they're in a breakout session. Okay, cool. So just to confirm, I've got Adam with me.
yes, Adam, Samir, Shannon, and Juliet.
Okay, great. If you're able to turn on your video, that would probably be helpful, Adam and Samir. But if it's too much to click on and deal with right now, don't worry about it. But let's dive in. And I will take some notes. But if folks want to just take 1 second to kind of think about this question, and I'll restate it, which is, how can the program be better structured to incorporate equity and environmental justice principles, such as surveying vulnerable populations, tribes, and high energy burden customers? So why don't we each just take a moment to think about that, and then I'll just open it up for conversation.
Jennifer, is there a way to put the question up on the screen?
Oh, there might be. So you can see the screen, it sounds like. Okay. Let me present my, yeah, I'll do that. Maybe.
Let me let you presenter.
There we go.
Probably the easiest way would be on the whiteboard, I imagine.
Oh.
On the share.
Oh, that might be a little small, but it's up there.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone like to go first? And share your thoughts?
Well, I'm happy to. Can you guys hear me? This is Adam.
I can.
I have my camera on. I don't know if you can't see me. I don't know.
I can see you and I can hear you, Adam.
Okay, good. One of the things that we've been talking a lot about is and bear with me, in the context of what's going on right now and economic opportunity, there's a lot of power in public procurement processes especially for small and medium-sized businesses. And so this is a much longer conversation, but it would be really interesting to talk about how the state could manage procurement processes aimed at Black-owned and people of color-owned businesses and clean tech at the same time. And I know that's a big lift, but the lever for, in our experience, lending into this space is a lot of frontier sort of work because of the things I mentioned earlier. So having more predictable sources of revenue around procurement and then really going hard to find companies that are owned by entrepreneurs of color to file into that procurement process and financing them to make that leap it's a powerful tool if done right. It's hard to do, but not impossible.
And this is Shannon, and I maybe speaking a little bit more to the residential side of this as well. I think there just needs to be sometimes more creative uses of the money, right? Like if we want to help vulnerable populations, tribal populations, reading verbatim here, high energy burden customers, often those, and I'm not saying all of the time, but often those customers also have lower incomes and credit challenges. So maybe, looking at things like using money to be able to buy down the interest rate. So people that are already challenged economically can, have an even further reduced payment. Using money to, as grants to buy down the process. And then also the education piece, like if this is a state program run by the Department of Commerce, I don't understand why we can't get utilities involved so utilities can reach out to those customers. Utilities have historically been like, I don't want to talk about lending. We can get in trouble for that. And, it would be really nice if Commerce could work with utilities or utilities work with Commerce to say, hey, we can reach out to these customers. We can talk to them about these opportunities and just to get the word out, because I think often people with credit challenges and lower income just assume that they're not going to qualify for any loan or don't know what's available to them. And as individual lenders in the process, we do our best to get the word out there, but it would be really helpful if utilities were involved. Like maybe it's a message on your utility bill saying, hey, did you know you could do this? And here's some lenders in this program that could help you. I think that's an important piece of it. And then lastly, and I'm not always the popular person for saying this, we need to put people in a position to succeed, right? So if someone's economic situation is such that they can't afford to pay their bills, period, us giving them a loan so they have a cleaner source of energy but still have a loan payment isn't really helping them overall. So I think we also need to be cognizant of that we're helping people be successful financially as well as being cleaner with their energy usage.
Hey,
and nobody was
Samir.
talking, and I thought I still had myself on mute. I was like, dang, did I just go through that whole, eloquent speech and I was on mute? But I wasn't. Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to take notes on the whiteboard. It's a finicky little whiteboard. If I move my cursor off of it, I can't go back to my line. But ignore my misspellings also.
Got it.
Adam, were you going to say something, or was that Samir? Someone was.
Yeah, it's Samir. I'll go ahead and go next. Well, I admit I'm still becoming more familiar with the structure of this program, so there are probably some things that I'm unaware of. But I would say, broadly speaking, one of the key things that it could do is use the environmental health disparities map to the greatest extent possible in how it prioritizes the distribution of funding so that the dollars benefit those communities that rank, as the most impacted on the map. This would really parallel the recommendation that was already in Initiative 1631. So I think a lot of the language and the definition of benefit could copy that, because I understand there may be, technical challenges, but I think benefit is really just, the project doesn't necessarily have to be in the community, but it has to benefit the community. So I think using the map is a huge one. And then sort of just going off of a little bit of what Shannon mentioned about utility engagement, just from my own experience in doing this, I mean, there definitely is a lack of awareness of what is even out there. And the fact that people can save money, you know, through loans or different grants, you know, on their nonprofit facilities or whatever. But I think, you know, there's so many other things that people have on their minds and stuff going on. And then, you know, if nobody makes this apparent, then it'll definitely slip through the cracks. So some type of an outreach component, whether that's commerce or just getting the utilities or both. Just a couple of other things, and I might be jumping in different areas, but I, from my own experience in helping a church in Tacoma try to get solar, they felt really hesitant of taking out loans. I think one thing that could have made them more comfortable is if there was a securitization of those loans, if maybe some of the money went to that. And then with some other entities, and I think this applied to the church as well, I remember the lack of on-bill financing as a repayment mechanism. You know, it was available for Seattle City Light, but it wasn't available elsewhere. So if there's a way that, you know, I'm sure that requires some program funding, but if that could be there, then I think that would be useful. And then you know, this is probably obvious, but the 30% tax credit barrier, certainly an issue with nonprofits. And then, you know, the church, separation of church and state itself. I don't know if we can get around that, but that was definitely a barrier for specifically the church I worked with. And, you know, I worked with them on applying for a grant from Tacoma Power, and Tacoma Power said they loved the grant. It's just that it was voted on by members of the Green Power Program, and there were a couple of other schools that ended up being much more well organized with their teachers, and they got more votes, so the grants went to them. But you know, of course, those schools also had access to other pots of money that the church didn't. So if there's other side ways the state could help churches get financing, you know, by respecting that separation, that would be great. And those are the ones that I had off the top. Thank you.
Samir, would you mind saying a little bit more about the securitization comment about the church and the solar project?
Yeah. Well, so it was that they were worried. There was a worry about them taking out a loan and not being able to pay it back. And if I think the securitization would probably go to, I guess now that I distinctly remember documenting this it's been a couple months since I worked on this, but it was like a backup in case there's like a default on the loan, then to ease the concern, there would be some other source of money that would pay it. So I think it was the church itself. They felt worried about paying off the loan. So if for some reason, you know, they had a financial problem and they just couldn't pay off the loan, then I think the case was that the state would provide money to just cover the loan.
Right.
Hello, this is Hans. I just wanted to say that we're back out of our breakout session, just so you know that we returned to the main group.
Great, thanks, Hans. Oh, we're just getting started. It's just starting to get good. I was going to say we could take just, I just muted myself, a few more minutes in our breakout session, but it sounds like we're all back. So let's just join into one conversation. I wanted Samir or Adam, if you wanted to finish the thought there. I didn't want to cut you off, and then we can just open it up for group conversation.
No, that was great to hear, and I'm sure that the folks at Commerce are taking that in, Samir, because it is difficult, especially with debt-averse borrowers or potential borrowers, right? Whether they be nonprofits or just simply conservative. It's sometimes difficult to get them to borrow for these projects. So some sort of insurance program that is not related to their balance sheet, like a loan loss reserve, could be helpful in moving the needle for them.
Yeah.
And this is Shannon, and I just kind of want to add, though, and maybe I'm looking at it a little bit differently. That goes back to me to being cognizant of helping people be financially successful. So if a borrower is concerned that they can't make the payments, should we, I mean, that to me, that's not, when we use the funds for loan loss reserve, but part of us being good stewards of the funds is to ensure we continually have those to use, and not so much in the sense like, well, you can get this loan because if you can't pay it, we have funds that will pay it off for you. So I think that's a fine line, and Samir may have been talking about something a little bit different, and you mentioned debt aversion, Adam, and to me that's different as far as, do you really want to take on a debt as opposed to, I don't really know if I can pay this debt back. So to me, it's two different things. But yeah, that kind of goes back to helping with like having some grants to help with the maybe part of the project cost as well.
And I may not be articulating exactly what it was. This was something I worked on several months ago. So let me go back and think about what about that situation more. And if I have further elaboration, I can email all of you.
Cool. Thank you.
Great, this is Hans. Would it be helpful if I just gave a quick summary of our group and then just invite the group to kind of talk through?
Yeah, I was going to say that, and I am trying, I don't know if you can all see the whiteboard. I'm trying to take some notes. This is a horrible whiteboard. Every time I move my cursor, I can't restate it. So ignore the spelling mistakes, ignore me futzing around here, but I'll try to capture notes. So go ahead, Hans.
Okay, yeah. So overall, there's a ton of great information here. Like I said, I think we could have benefited by some more time as well because we were just getting rolling. But, you know, one of the things we definitely heard on here is that there needs to be some probably additional dollars. So like if this is something that is we're seriously looking at for clean energy lending, there needs to be more operational support and admin dollars just because this is a harder market segment to reach. And so in terms of whether it's staff capacity or just the cost of the loans, it's something that definitely needs to be in consideration. As well, I think that there was some different aspects and different thoughts around incentives and whether incentives would help with that. But if incentives were being offered, it sounded like they would definitely have to be more of a long-term stable incentive versus the fast or famine approach, where people know or can't feel they can rely on these things. As well as we heard, like anything that's happening sounds like it's more along the lines of challenging around having short-term loans, that the loans need to be definitely longer in length to just pay for the energy savings in and of themselves and also to promote that stability. That with the low-income segment, that loan forgiveness should be really thought of or be at least be part of the portfolio package, just because of many of the lenders in this space may have trouble paying back the funds or have real concerns about taking upon debt where their assets are at stake. There's a lot more there, but I just wanted to give a really brief summary and then, of course, invite anybody that was in the breakout session too to be able to comment further on those things.
Okay. So we also had, can you all see the whiteboard?
Yes.
Okay. So we, in our group, also had just getting started on the conversation and had some ideas around, you know, intersection. Maybe the state could play a convening role or a administrative role in the intersection between clean energy, businesses, lending, and finances, and leveraging public procurement processes. And maybe there's a lever we can lean on there as a state. We talked about in the residential market, a buy-down interest rate for credit challenged, economically challenged consumers. There were some ideas around increased engagement and involvement between lenders, the state, and the utility, and what that could look like in terms of promoting the products, making sure that consumers even know that they exist and have easy access to them. Shannon had good reminders of making sure we're keeping in mind that we want to be good stewards of the funds, and there's really a fine line of, encouraging folks to take on debt who maybe shouldn't be, and just being really cognizant of helping people setting them up to be successful financially. Some ideas around using the environmental health disparities map and helping to target and prioritize the distribution of funds, particularly to communities that have high environmental burden and disparities. And then you caught us talking about loan loss reserves and backing and securitization of loans. And we got into discussion, a specific example around a project that Samir was working on in Tacoma with a church. And we just started talking about, or we had mentioned on-bill financing as an important mechanism that's currently being offered utility by utility mostly, and what could that look like? Is there a way in which we could make that statewide? Those are just a few ideas. We've only got 10 minutes left, but let's take at least 5 minutes. I'd love to invite other folks to comment on any of the other ideas, whether it's like, oh, yeah, that's a good one, I'm in support of that, or maybe it spurred additional thoughts. So free for all.
I just wanted, this is Linda, and I wanted to concur with Shannon that it's really important to think about, we should not be encouraging some people to take on debt. If they are, if they don't have $400 to meet an unexpected expense, and that's 40% of Americans or 60%, anyway, they shouldn't be taking on debt. So we do have to think about grant programs in addition to lending. And I'm also just a question about how this might or might not interact with CPACER. That's probably a topic for another discussion.
Hey, this is Samir, and I actually, ultimately, grant programs are really the best option. I'll definitely agree with that. And also, the loan terms with the Sustainable Energy Trust, the 10-year period was very short. So that could be lengthened. That would be great. Thank you.
I guess I just would say with the loan term length, for us, we just need to be cognizant that we're, a small revolving loan fund. So it is a zero-sum game. So if we extend out the loan term, we'll make less loans. So that's always just something to remember.
I think this is Shannon, and I know for us, like when we talk about loan terms, I think that's, from what I understand, unless we've been doing something wrong, that was always set as the person who, the respondee was basically had the flexibility to set their own loan terms. So for our CEF fund, we actually offer loan terms up to 20 years. So I think that was set kind of by whatever the lenders was comfortable with doing.
Right. So it was up to the lender comfort level to make those decisions based on their entity and their product.
Right.
And the state probably doesn't have a role to play to set those necessarily, but maybe. Other thoughts, ideas, things you would want to know more about?
Jennifer, I know that Allison had a few questions earlier, just after we'd heard from people about how they've been using the grant so far. I don't know if that's a good time for you to raise those questions, Allison. No pressure if not.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I did get an answer in my breakout group to one of the questions, and I actually have a third question, which is, I think I direct this primarily to the team at Commerce, but perhaps others are aware of any model programs in other states that are serving a low-income population effectively through a loan model, a revolving loan model.
I don't have an answer on that, but I would love to hear from other lenders on that.
This is Shannon. So when back in the day, when Community Power Works was first happening, and we had some not CEF grant funding, it was different grant funding, and we were able to use part of the funds we had as interest rate buy down, so the rate was actually bought down to 0%. That was helpful in reaching low-income customers, and that was part of it, I think, because, again, with the 0% interest rate, that did help. It's not a huge difference, but it did help lower the payment. And when there's the 0%, I think for a lot of people that just was like, oh, I can afford that, there's no interest. But I think it was also the combination of how the program worked. And I know, Craft, you guys were in that program too, but it was good. There was a lot of educational pieces and a lot of groups working together to make the process easy, which regardless of your economic status or, I just think that's really helpful. So it was more kind of like a one-stop shop where people could, you know, get an estimate for the work, get financing, and do all these things, and it was communicated very well. And I think that was helpful in the success of the program at the time, and in also reaching lower income and underserved communities.
You were mentioning something similar in the breakout session too, right, about complexity and expense of the program, and also just getting people in the door.
Yes, the clip annotated version of my comments were the harder programs are for customers to use regardless of income level, but particularly for lower income, the less demand you're going to see. Especially from our perspective, where contractors are kind of our sales force. They're the ones that are out offering this, offering our current program to people, to consumers that they're interacting with. You know, if they have to learn a complex program, they just aren't going to offer it. They're going to hold up the Wells Fargo brochure and say the Wells Fargo, you know, home energy loan is available, and that's it, and not even present to us, because once you have to educate them about saying, well, this customer has to be this in this geography, like they just aren't going to use it. And without additional operational support on our end, you know, we can't go out and reach those people ourselves.
Yeah, thanks for that. Jennifer, I assume that we're having a hard stop right about noon. Is that correct?
Yes. So we've got 2 minutes to wrap up. I really wish we had more time, but I appreciate you bearing with us today on these, which can feel kind of clunky, conversations over the internet and from our homes. But let's go around. I'd just like to give everyone one last chance if they'd like to chime in with a parting thought. And then we will, at Commerce, take this information that we just started to get into, synthesize it, and perhaps do some research. And maybe this is where we can have Juliet, our intern, help us in some different areas and some more background work. And then we'll probably do a reach out to all of you before our next meeting, which is on, I think, the 30th, so not too far away, to figure out how we can structure the 30th to get further into these topics and make it a robust discussion. So with that, I will just open it up. Does anyone have any final thoughts they want to share, or resources or recommendations that you want us to further research?
This is Adam. I would just emphasize that the work that you all are doing with the governor's office and the legislature around climate policy and climate action is a great opportunity to consider where investment moves the needle. So I love that you're doing this. I think there are lots of opportunities, and we would love to be part of the conversations about what, and the one I gave about procurement is just an example, about what moves the needle in terms of small business opportunity, small, medium business opportunity around climate action. So unfortunately, I think until those pieces are more integrated, we will continue to find opportunities to invest, but they will be like they are now, kind of across the board. And while we feel good about that, I want them to also contribute to clear motion on climate action and climate justice policy. So I think this is the right time to sort of reevaluate and fine-tune.
Great, thanks for that. Oh my gosh, I'm so challenged with this whiteboard. We're not going to use this next time, so ignore all what I'm doing here. Any other parting thoughts? We're just a minute over, but since I've got you all here, I just want to give you an opportunity.
I don't know if it got mentioned, but as you guys are doing your research, I don't know if the other group talked about the 15-year life requirement, but the fact that this is coming out of capital budget dollars obviously does provide some restrictions and complexity on some of the projects that we finance. And so I know there are other ways to bring money into the state government that might not involve the capital budget, so like a tax credit sale program or something like that. And so I think that maybe needs to be in the option set of not just discussing what the product needs to be, but making sure that the product is not, the grant product, you know, for this program is not restricted by the funding source that is capitalizing it. You can create a great program for low-income people and to reach businesses and do community solar and all this stuff, but if everything has to meet that 15-year life requirement or 13-year life requirement of the capital budget, that's a pretty quick way to suddenly narrow the market dramatically. 13 years. Hans, you can correct me.
Yeah, the average based on the bond is 13 years.
Okay, I'll correct that. I can figure out how to do that. Duly noted, though. I think that's really, I'm glad you brought that up, Carl, of just like not being constrained in our thinking to how this has been funded in the past with all the capital budget requirements or capital funded project requirements that come with CEF. Any last thoughts? I thought I might have heard something, but it might have just been me beeping myself on and off. Okay, well, thanks everyone. We will share some notes on this and do some more coordinating, organizing research before our next session and be in touch. I appreciate you bearing with us in our technology trials here today. Also, if you think there is someone that we should include in the next session or reach out to separately that could have some valuable input into this process, feel free to reach out to Hans or myself. And otherwise, we will let you go. Hopefully you can get out and enjoy some lunch in the sun and think about your traveling trip. Okay, I don't even know actually how to end this, Alana, but thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.